Well, hello. I'm B. Come along with me and let's talk a little bit about the love of money. So, earlier today I was just um, contemplating some things and having conversation with the Lord, and I was thinking about greed and what constitutes greed and um, all of these types of things. And it made me sit down and really do some chewing. And so I just wanted to share some of these thoughts with you. Well, the first thing that kind of sparked this train of thought for me was really about um, how I'm sure if you're paying attention, you've probably heard somebody at some point say, oh, well, if you're stuck in a poverty cycle and you're always thinking about money, then you're actually being greedy and you're making mammon, the spirit of mammon or money, your God. And I get that argument. I understand where people are coming from when they make that argument. While also I don't necessarily always agree with it. I think it might be true in some instances, but I don't think that it is always necessarily true. I think that there are plenty of times when someone is in a cycle of poverty and they are endeavoring to pay their bills and take care of things the way that we need to and are meant to do. And when we do that, we're not necessarily idolizing money. Money is necessary and it's required in this life. So I just think that there's ways in which we can finesse how we're thinking about this and how we're talking about money. And it's such an taboo topic in the Christian world. Yet we are all children of the Most High King who owns all the wealth, right? He owns all the cattle on 1,000 hills. He owns all of the gold and all of the silver. He is the King of all kings, and he delights in the details of our lives. And there are more than 7,000 instances in the Bible where he is talking about the blessings that he wants to bestow upon us. And so many of them are prosperity. He wants to give us life and life to the full, and he wants to give us all these lavish and wonderful good gifts because we are children of God. And that's his desire, is to do this for us, right? So when we say that loving money is the root of all evil, then are we saying that the Most High King, who wants to lavish us with money and with riches, is desiring to lavish us with the root of all evil? So that itself is a false doctrine. So a lot of people will say the love of money is the root of all evil. Well, let's back up a little bit. First of all, what's commonly said is money is the root of all evil. That's what we hear most often, and that's a misquotation. It is the love of money. But then there's an additional piece that often gets left out in this. So it is 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10, and it is the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Not all evil, all kinds of evil, which is a little bit different, because when you're saying all kinds of, you're saying a plethora of, not totality. It's not an absolute, right? It is just a large quantity. It is the majority, right? The root of the majority of evil is the love of money. Well, and that made me really curious. Okay, what was the word that was being spoken when they were talking about love? And this is really interesting. Okay, so in the original text, the word that they're using when they're saying the love of money is the Greek word philtron. And philtron literally means love charm or potion. How crazy is that? The love charm of money is the root of all kinds of evil. So let's go a little bit more into the meaning. Love charm, potion, any means to evoke love or affection. Okay, and then when we look at the meaning of the word evoke, it means to call forth, to summon, or to call out. It's from the Latin word. Also means to rouse. So from the Latin word is two word parts, ex, which means out, and vocare, which means to call, which is related to the word vox, which is voice. The Proto-Indo-European root word, so the oldest known root word part for that is wekwu, which means to speak. Wow, okay, to speak. Interesting. Let's keep going. So charm, because it is a love charm that we're talking about. Charm means incantation, magic spell, song or verse, and it also means, get this, religious formulas. And it comes from the Proto-Indo-European root word K-A-N, can, which is to sing. Okay, so to speak is to evoke, and to sing is to charm. Okay, let's keep going. I'm going to come back to that religious formulas in just a minute, but let's keep going. Okay, charm. So another meaning of the word charm is enchant. So if you think about the word charming, enchanting or charming, oh, that person is so charming, they're so enchanting. Well, there's meanings to these words, right? So to enchant is to fill with desire, to protect, to cure, to treat, to maltreat, and to harm. Interesting, isn't that? That all of those meanings come from the word enchant. It's because it literally means to practice sorcery or witchcraft. It comes from the Latin word incantare, which means to fix a spell upon. And it comes from two word roots, in, which is into, and cantare, which is to sing. Again, we go back to that Proto-Indo-European root, which is can, which is to speak into. So in and can is to speak into. So think about that when someone says we're speaking something into being, right? Or when you hear someone say, I'm going to speak life over this situation, or I'm going to speak death over this situation. And that's common in the Christian circles for people to say something like that. And in non-Christian circles, a lot of people will say that they're speaking something into being, right? Manifestation. They're manifesting it with their words. That's because it is a spell. That's what it means. And so when you think of someone who is charming or enchanting, consider that. Consider what that means when you're saying that someone is charming. That means that they are, they're casting a spell on you, right? They might not to say that person is literally doing that, right? But you are literally saying that. So be mindful of the words that you're using. Because you really want to be under someone's spell, even if it's, even if it seems benign, right? And they're just a nice person, and but when you say that they're charming and you found them very enchanting or whatever, You're coming under their spell, and the only person's spell you want to come under is Jesus, the gospel, the good spell, okay? The good word. That's literally what the word gospel means, is good spell. And spell means word, okay? So, let's see. Yes, and so let's think about this when we're using our words, when we're using our speech, when we're speaking something into being. So why is it important, and why is it that we can do this, right? How is it that an incantation, a simple series of words, or a religious formula, a mantra, or a prayer that we repeat, or what have you, that this actually works? And tell me in the comments if it has ever worked for you. Just add your thoughts in the comments. Has this ever worked? Have you ever spoken something into being? Have you ever spoken a word and seen it come to pass? Raise your hand if you have, right? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you've done it knowingly, or if you've done it unknowingly. Let's talk about that. And what does that mean? And, you know, what does it mean to do it? There's different ways that you can do it. Again, we're talking about the gospel, and then we're talking about manifestation. Okay, that sort of new age, old age, sorcery. Okay, but why is it that it works? Well, it works because our breath, the Ruach, is given to us by God. Okay, so it is His Spirit that is in us. It is His breath that is in us, that gives us life and gives all things life. It was first the Word. First there was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. That is, I think that's John 1:1. So that that's such a deep scripture all by itself, because Jesus is the Word, okay? And the Word is God, and the Word was with God when the world was first created, okay? So that's our Creator. And how did He create the world? With the Word, okay? He spoke. And how did He bring life into us? He breathed life into us. He put His Ruach into us, the breath of life. He gave us the breath of life. And Jesus is the life. Okay? But there's more to it even than that. So recently, in modern times, or maybe we're in postmodern times, it has been discovered, if you listen to the lungs while they're breathing, and you amplify the sound of the lungs breathing, what you will hear is the sound of the name of God. And there's conjecture about how we pronounce those letters, Yod He Vav He. There's you know, some people say Jehovah, some people say Yahweh, some people say Yahuwah. It's the one that sort of stands out for me the most is the latter, Yahuwah. That stands out to me. I can understand why people would come around to both Yahweh and Jehovah, just based on how language and letters have evolved over time. And I think that they're all perfectly valid. But when we listen to the sound of a breath, or even if you breathe yourself very loudly in and out of your mouth, you're going to hear Yahuwah. That's what you're going to hear. So if you just take a breath in and a breath out, like just a big sigh, in and out, that's what you're going to hear, is the sound of the name of God. And that's the sound that we hear when we listen to the lungs and we amplify the sound of the lungs. We hear the name of God over and over and over again. And so every time we breathe, which means every time we speak, because on We can only speak with breath. If we have no breath, we have no speech. Okay? So that's this, the breath is what carries the sound as it moves through our vocal cords. It's the air, the breath, the ruach of life moving through our vocal cords and vibrating against our vocal cords, creating sound, right? Vibration, the vibration of sound waves, okay? God is so amazing. Everything about us is a miracle. Everything about this world is a miracle. All of life truly testifies, all of creation truly testifies of his greatness. And this is just one aspect of that. So it's vibrating through our vocal cords, coming out on the breath. That sound is made and it vibrates out into the world, okay? Literally vibrating. This is not some kind of woo-woo thing. It can be measured. Sound waves are measured. I'm sure you're familiar with the idea of sound waves. It's not just conceptual, it's real and measurable. And those sound waves, they travel and they have an impact on things. And there have been many, many studies done of various different types about how sound waves have impact on material life, okay? And there have been studies that have been done that show there's a measurement tool that can be used to measure sound waves, where it can be used with both water and with sand, and where you can see the pattern of the sound waves. And there are patterns that are geometrically symmetrical and ordered and beautiful, and they look like the most perfect geometric forms, like what we see in nature when we see flowers. And we look, anytime we look at microcosmically, we look at the cells, or we go macrocosmically and look at the galaxies. These same types of patterns show up, and they're considered the perfect form, and you'll see these types of patterns showing up when you see sound waves that are tuned to a certain frequency, okay, such as 444 or 432 or 369. And when you kind of do some digging into the Bible and look at these numbers, you see that there's some significance there. And you can hear it when you're paying attention. You can even hear the difference. And you can see there's actually worship teachers who've been going around teaching worship leaders to tune their instruments to 432 rather than 440, which is what the Rockefeller Foundation had created the standardized tuning at a certain point in time. And it really radically changed things, and you can see that. And you can see when it's tuned to 440, when instruments are tuned to 440, you can see the pattern is very chaotic. There's a similar thing. There was a study done by a Japanese doctor, Dr. Emoto, who was studying the crystalline form of water. And so he was looking at the crystalline form of water under a microscope, and he did an experiment. And in the experiment, he had some containers of water that he had people speak words like negative words like hate or pain or suffering or things that we would consider negative. And then he, on the other side, he had people speak over the water, and he also placed those labels on each of those containers. He labeled them too, so there's something there about the word itself. But on the other side, he had people speaking love and kindness and generosity over the water. And then he studied the crystal form of the water, the crystalline form of the water, microscopically. And he took pictures of it. And so they're out there. You can find this if you just Google Dr. Emoto water crystals, or just whatever I just said to you. Just put it in your little Google machine. It'll pop it up for you. And similarity, all of the negative words showed up as like chaotic patterns, not patterns, but chaos. And then the positive words showed up in these beautiful patterns, these beautiful ordered shapes. And God is the God of order, not of chaos. So sound is important. Sound has an effect. Words have an effect. He also did an experiment where it was just the words and no one speaking. And it was a similar situation. So our words have an impact. The sound of our voice has an impact. Those sound waves travel through the world, okay? And they bump up against things. They bump up against people. They bump up against our water. They bump up against, you think about our bodies are comprised of something like, it's like 97% water or something like that. I don't remember exactly the number, but it's a high level of water is what, we're just like bags of water walking around. So think about that. And also think about like anytime someone has spoken over you. Think about, just take a moment right now, think back to your childhood. When someone in your life, let's say, it doesn't matter if it's an adult or a child, but someone said something negative about you that really stuck with you. Just consider that for a moment. Just take a moment. And now think about how you feel just thinking about that. Remembering that moment and how you felt in that moment. And consider how that shaped you as you walk through your life. And are you healed from that now? Or do you still have more healing to do? Do you still need to forgive that person? If you do, I invite you right now to just forgive that person. Whatever they said to you, they did not understand the impact of their words. Even if they were trying to hurt you, they truly did not understand the impact of their words, and they probably don't even remember it today. And we all say and do things. Consider now, while you're thinking about forgiveness, you might even want to bring to mind a time when you said something to somebody that was unkind. Okay, so let's just forgive that person, forgive yourself. None of us knew what we were doing, okay? Okay, so now let's also bring to mind another time in our lives when someone said something about us that really lifted us up and carried us in a way. If it was for a day or a week, or if it's something that really has impacted our lives and inspired us and helped us to move forward in life, just give that a moment. Just bring that to mind. Maybe it was an adult in your childhood who really spoke something beautiful about you, or maybe it was a friend or a teacher, or maybe it was something that happened to you more recently. And just think about how that makes you feel. Just notice how you feel right now thinking about that moment. Just calling it to mind how that affects how you feel. And now too, just bring to mind a moment that you might have said something to somebody that lifted them up. And just give thanks. Give thanks for that moment. Give thanks for that person that spoke well over you, that spoke life into you. And praise God for inspiring you to speak life over someone else. That you were in a space where you had the capacity to speak well of someone. And how does that make you feel, even just knowing that you yourself spoke well about somebody? How does that feel inside of you? So words have tremendous impact. And we can live into the words that are spoken over us. We can take them on as blessings or curses, okay, without even knowing. And they have an impact that is unseen and yet is measurable. And that can travel through time and space. And is even resonating in our cells that are filled with water. Okay? So words, spells, they have meaning, and they are carried on the ruach of life, combined with the name of God. The name of God. So now consider your speech, just not day-to-day speech, and how it is that you use your speech. Either what's your self-talk look like? How do you talk to your spouse or your children or your co-workers? And, what does your idle speech look like? When you're not really thinking about what you're saying, you're just kind of talking. And now, remember, all of that has the name of God attached to it. So, how do you want to be speaking? What words do you want to attach the name of God to? Okay, so that's just a little something for you. But let's go back to this. Let's go back to this word study. Okay, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. The love charm, the speech and song, the religious formula applied to money, related to money, is the root of all kinds of evil. Okay? What are we summoning? What are we evoking? What are we calling out? What are we rousing? What are we calling forth? What is the religious formula? Okay? So, there's a lot out there about prosperity preaching, and I think there's something to that we need to be paying attention to and being leery of, but I don't think we quite have it for the right reasons. I think what happens is then we get caught up in this idea that the false doctrine of the love of money is the root of all evil, rather than what is the religious formula that's being applied. So there's a lot of teachers out there saying, well, if you use these 5 steps, or you apply these 7 teachings from the Bible, you're always going to make money, right? But what is witchcraft? Okay, this is where we need to go with this. We need to say, what is witchcraft? You've heard me say this before if you're paying attention and listen to other videos before, but I just will say it again. Witchcraft, the meaning of the word witchcraft, is the same as the meaning of prostitution, and it just means that we're putting ourselves in front of God. So we're trying to control things, okay? We're trying to manage things, we're trying to control things, we're trying to manipulate things so that they will go our way, okay? And so it's our will, not God's will, okay? And so when we are so busy pursuing our will that we don't even stop to consider what God's will is, we are participating in witchcraft. We are prostituting ourselves. Literally, that's what those words mean, okay? And so let me just take a peek what I got here in my notes. So, sorcery and spells and witchcraft, we're using the power of God, the power of the speech that God gives us without consulting God. So the will of God is not in it. And ultimately what we're trying to do, unknowingly of course, or knowingly, some people are doing it on purpose, but most people are not. We're trying to usurp God. And I think I've heard this story somewhere before. Usurping God. Who could that be? Oh yeah, that's right. He got kicked out of heaven. He was the one who's in charge of songs, right? In charge of singing and praise and music and the vibration of sound. Yeah, Lucifer. Oh, interesting. The Prince of the Air. Interesting. Very interesting. So, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. But it's not the desire for money or loving money. It is when we are engaged in religious formulas, when we are engaged in practices of witchcraft, trying to make our will come to being rather than God's will come into being. And so the key here isn't about how much you think about money or how much you strive for money or any of that. Okay, we're slightly off with these ideas. The key here is, are we putting God's will first? Are we consulting God about how we're earning our money? Are we taking it to the Lord? Are we casting all of our cares before the Lord? Are we partnering with Him? Because that's all He wants, is for us to partner with Him, right? And to have no other idols before Him, right? That's really the meat of that teaching, is about what does it mean to have other idols. Well, that's putting something else before God, right? And that too is witchcraft. Anytime we put something else before God, that is essentially witchcraft, okay? So we got to get out of this idea in our head, because that word evokes a lot of things, and really get down to the literal meaning of the word, okay? When we are so busy with our own will that we ignore the will of God, whatever that might be, or not, or we just don't consult God, or we just don't even look to God or ask Him what His will is. We don't even bother asking Him. Maybe we think that it's, too small of a detail, or it's not appropriate to ask God about every little thing, but it says in the Bible for us to bring everything before Him and to cast all our cares onto him. And so let's do that. Let's cast all of our cares onto him. Let's be mindful of our speech. Be mindful of what we are attaching the name of God to, what's coming out of our mouths. And are we speaking life over things, or are we speaking death over things? And is that speech aligned with the will of our Creator? So, leaving you with those questions, something for you just to think about and consider, and share in the comments. I would love to hear from you any times that you might have inadvertently spoken something into being that you regret, or when are times that you might have gotten out in front of God. And if you have times that you did align with God before you took action or before you even spoke, and what's the difference? How did that work out for you? What did that look like? This is the place to share those things and explore and grow and edify one another. So please do like, share, comment, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. And let's keep this conversation going. All right. God bless you. I hope this edifies you, and I'll see you in the next one.